And we welcome you guys to another episode of Quarantine Chats. This is Quarantine Chats episode 41. We got a very special guest joining us today, former Howard basketball alum and former professional basketball player, John Spencer. How are you doing, John Spencer?
I'm great. What about you guys?
I'm doing great. Both me and Isaiah are here over in Fremont, California, Bay Area. Sweating a little bit, but got the AC on finally.
Hey, man, at least you're not over here with your AC broken, so that's a good thing.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be a tough way to manage it. But yeah, first question for you is I know you got a sports representation firm started right now. So kind of walk me through that. How's everything going and as far as future plans?
Well, everything's fine right now. I mean, I started my company back in 2006. I was actually working in television. I worked at ESPN and did a lot of stuff with the Atlantic 10 Conference, a lot of college basketball leading up to me deciding to leave New Jersey and move back to North Carolina. At the time, my wife and family, we were living in New Jersey. She was working at the NBA for David Stern. And, I was, doing my thing, trying to get people excited about the game of basketball, and woke up one day and just wanted to be a normal person and just be a dad and have some time to spend some time with my kids. And it just led to me starting my company so I could actually have more time with my kids, but I never thought that I'd be doing it this way for as long as I have, but I absolutely love it. We've grown. We've had a couple of successes with, getting guys drafted like Tony Bradley,
Right.
helping out PJ Tucker in 2006, my very first year with CAA, in which he went and signed his actual deal with Andre Buck at the time, and led Andre to that. I mean, we had guys like Chris Copeland, who made it with the Knicks back in the day, had a pretty good run coming in from overseas. Lance Thomas from Duke, Andre Dawkins got into the league, Rodney Purvis, Antonius Cleveland, Troy Daniels. I mean, we can keep going. And, it's been a pretty good run so far. Being a small company and having the opportunity to do what I'm doing, and it's given me the freedom to be my own person, I've absolutely enjoyed it more than you can ever imagine.
That's awesome. And what would you say is like your favorite memory as far as what's gone on since you started this business?
Uh, you know, it's a continuation of the same memory. And, I'll talk about Lance Thomas first, who played with the Knicks, Oklahoma City, New Orleans. Uh, the day that he was to get a call up in his D League first year and having a seizure on the basketball court and not
Wow.
having a chance to get his 10-day call up. And he had worked so hard. And I wasn't his agent at the time, but we were just working on it. He actually went into the developmental league without having an agent, to talk to his uncle and a guy named Anthony Avent, who played with the Orlando Magic, who knew the family really well, and built the relationship for me, and wound up being Lance's agent up until last year. And he went to CAA for, I don't know why, but he didn't play last year, so I'm kind of upset that he didn't play, but he wasn't on my
Yeah.
dime. But I kept him employed the entire time I've had him. And, just watching him claw his way into the NBA and make it. And then, a guy like Chris Copeland, he
Right.
goes out and he comes in from Europe and he makes it. So I was happy to have my first NBA player with Lance, but sitting on my deck when Chris told me he made the Knicks roster after 7 years of being in Europe literally made me cry, because Chris was my first client. And the goal was to be in the NBA. And it was never about anything else for him but being in the NBA. And every year something would happen. But if you talk to any of the
Yeah.
GMs or any of the scouts, they would tell you, I never stopped pushing for Chris. But the key was Chris never stopped pushing me. And a lot of times people want to be in the NBA and they stop pushing you. And it's really your dream. And it's
Right.
my dream to help you have your dream come true. But guys like Rodney Purvis, he got into the league. I think Rodney will get back in. With agents, you lose players, you keep players. But they constantly have people in their ears about what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing. But Rodney's a terrific player. Nobody gave him a chance to ever make an NBA roster after he left North Carolina State. And I told him his rookie year, nobody wanted to give him a shot. I told him to go to the G League. Hey, Rodney, you're going to make it. I'll bet you'll make it. If you don't make it, I'll pay you the money that you would make overseas. He made it into the league that year.
That is
So,
so cool.
yeah, so for me, it's like anybody can take a draft pick. and someone who's projected to be a lottery pick and get them into a situation that's better if you know what you're doing. If you're going to be a lottery pick, you're going to be a lottery pick one way or the other. There's some things you can do to knock yourself out of the lottery. But for me, my greatest joy is a reoccurring dream of helping those guys who really don't understand how to make it, help them get into that league. And I tell all my players, I was like, there's no such thing as a great agent. It's not. It's players who are great who make us look good. You know, because if I had Kobe, I'm the greatest agent since sliced bread, you know? But, you know, you go out and you think of a name like, you know, Donald Dixon. Like, who in the hell is Donald Dixon? So, and he can't play, and he's never played anywhere. And if I sent his video or some paperwork on him, they'll look at him and like, why are you sending me this? So when guys who really can play, who really wants to be in the league, when they do it, you know, it's a blessing. Chris Clemens, third all-time leading scorer in NCAA history from Campbell, didn't get drafted. But I told him from the beginning, even before he declared for the draft his junior year, I told Chris he was going to be in the NBA. I wasn't worried about it. I told his father the same thing. I think I have an eye for talent that's undiscovered and or under the radar, I should say, and help them understand the mental aspect of getting into that league. But I'll go back to the beginning of my statement. Lance Thomas can write a book on how to be an NBA player. Seriously, he's that hardworking, that dedicated, and that's really what it takes. And if a guy's going to work that hard to get into the NBA, I'm going to work harder than him because I don't want him to say John Spencer dropped the ball.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. A lot of it seems like what you're saying is, you know, it's about wanting your dream. And, you know, you can only represent them so much, but it's the player that makes the opportunity in the first place, and they got to want it more. They got to actually want it. You can't want it for them.
Absolutely. And, you know, I see it every day. I got guys who keep saying they want to play in the NBA. Some guys want to go out and chase chicks. You know, some want to go drink and get high. Some want to go out and spend money. But my message to anybody who wants to play at the next level, either it's a high level in Europe or in Asia or a high level in the NBA, you know, don't fall in love with the lifestyle. The lifestyle will get you shot and killed. But if you fall in love with the life is getting up every day, putting your shoes on, taking care of your body, working out, getting your body rest, doing recovery, and getting right back in the lab. That's hard work, but that's what life is. But the lifestyle is a reward from the hard work. And if you start putting the lifestyle in front of the hard work, you're going to fail every time.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense. So you've obviously had, you know, experience with both college recruiting, being a Howard University basketball star and alumni, and then also playing in the NBA yourself overseas, and also helping these guys reach their professional goals. So what would you say is the main difference between, you know, getting the attention of a college recruiter and then getting the attention of an NBA or overseas scout?
First of all, getting the attention of a college recruiter has more to do with what environment you put yourself in. Basketball players can play, and if they can play, most good coaches are going to call college coaches like, hey, I got a player for you. So, you know, with AAU basketball, high school basketball, some of the club teams and developmental programs and, you know, the NBA Top 100 camp, junior NBA, there are a lot of mechanisms for college coaches to see players. And plus, you know, I'm 53 years old, about to be 54. We didn't have YouTube and all these videos and highlights back in the day. But these guys have a platform that they can expose themselves. Now, college basketball going into the pros is very, very different because if you can play, the NBA will find you. There's very few players that most NBA teams never really heard of. And so they do a great job scouting both here and internationally. The situations over in Europe is guys like myself, I'll pick up the phone and I'll call agents overseas or some of my former teammates or either coaches or general managers overseas now. So there's no real traditional scouting format in Europe or in Asia. And a lot of times it comes from us putting together marketing packages to send to teams with videos to try to sell them that way. So once it gets out to a couple of different people over in Europe or in Asia, it becomes, it spreads like wildfire. which is cool if you got a good network of people. But the difference in finding those players here in the States is that the NBA got their eyes everywhere. You know, they got
Right.
their eyes in China, eyes in Africa right now, eyes down in South America. I mean, they're doing a great job down in Mexico, playing preseason games down in Mexico. And with the international competitions and USA basketball involved with the Olympics, the NBA is literally international. And I mean, you know, you're talking about 300 million people in China watching basketball. That's a lot.
Yeah, and I would say Kobe Bryant and Yao Ming contributed a lot to that basketball economy in
Well,
China.
Michael Jordan, I mean, my wife was managing director of NBA Asia at the time when Michael Jordan was playing. And he just took basketball to a whole different level. And there's very few people that could have done that. And one of the things that I will say about Michael is that he and Kobe both transcended cultural barriers. I think he and Kobe both touched people's lives in a different way. Now, maybe, you know, people didn't have the access, but when they did have the access, Michael and Kobe made all of them feel extremely special. LeBron's carrying that torch right now. He's a pretty special basketball player, very, very unique. But there's something inherently different about Michael and Kobe in the way that they carry their, and I hate to use the term swag, but the way they carry themselves in a way whereas I know I have this sphere of energy around me, and it's good, and I'm just gonna use the hell out of it as much as I can. And if you would have gone into China back in 1996, everything was named Jordan. I don't care. Restaurants was named Jordan. Shoes that were fake was Jordan. Clothing stores were called Jordan. They had Jordan cars, bicycles. Everything was Jordan. That's never been done before. And and I think it's going to be really, really hard to duplicate it. Now, Yao Ming did a lot for China basketball and international basketball because it gave an international audience the opportunity to go out and say, we can do this too. Now you look at Luka Doncic, he's carrying that.
Oh my God, he's incredible. Yeah, that's the next Larry Bird right there.
I think he might be better than Larry Bird somewhere down the line. I do. I think he could be, you know, one of the top all-time greats.
Yeah. Well, I definitely trust someone who's worked a lot in the business on that, and looking forward to everything that Doncic can do.
Yeah, he's good, and you know, for them to have two high draft picks back-to-back years with guys like Dennis Smith and moving on from Dennis and giving the keys to the car to Luka, I mean, that says a lot about his abilities. Now, the key is going to be how can he make his teammates better, right, and not having somebody younger to come in and take away from his light, but try to incorporate everybody else's light and build that fire that can, you know, push towards the championship. I know Donnie Nelson very, very well, and, you know, he's great at finding talent. Rick Carlisle is a pretty good basketball coach, and Mark Cuban is very progressive in the way that he approaches the game of basketball. So I'm sure that Dallas will have their they will have their way with basketball in a couple of years. They're going to build something special down there.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. And Isaiah's actually got a question about, you know, as far as sports representation in the general manager room.
Yeah, but before I go to my question, I just want to follow up on John's point. You know, he talked about Luka Doncic and the Mavs. You know, he's exactly right. The Mavs are going to be dangerous for years to come. They've got Doncic. They've got Kristaps Porzingis, who a lot of people forget. A couple years ago, right, Kristaps Porzingis was one of the top 10 players in the NBA. He was that good. They've got a good young nucleus there. I think the Mavs are going to be dangerous for a long time. But as far as my question is, John, you've seen the recent trend in the NBA, which is now teams are now hiring sports agents to become GMs. We have the Warriors hiring Bob Myers to be their general manager and run their basketball operations department. And then you have the Lakers with Rob Pelinka, former agent of Kobe Bryant. He is now running basketball operations for the Lakers. And I want to ask you, first of all, would you be interested in running an NBA team's basketball operations one day? And why do you think that teams are now going this unconventional route and hiring agents to run basketball operations instead of, your normal typical basketball executives?
Utah have an assistant general manager that was a former agent. There's a lot of former agents that are working in the front office of a lot of NBA franchises right now. I went the other way. I went from working with the Knicks as a director of international scouting under a guy named Tim Shea, Ed Tapscott, and Ernie Grunfeld to doing this on this side. The short answer is hell no. Primarily because, you got a big budget to work with and you got to win, but you're only as good as the team that you actually put on the floor. And I think I could put together a pretty good team, but, I think that business on that side is, who do you trust? And you don't know who's really trying to cut your feet off at the roots or who's really stabbing you in the back. Everybody talks about being an agent and how cutthroat and dirty it is. And it can get a little harsh from time to time. But the majority of us really like each other, believe it or not. They do some snake stuff behind your back and all this other stuff. But, that's a part of the game. And we never really take it personal because it's just business at the end of the day. But I try to keep my hands out of everybody else's cookie jar because, I like what I have and I don't need anybody else's shoes on my feet, so to speak. But when it comes down to having a relationship with the president of a club or the owner of a club, and they're always hovering over your shoulders telling you, we got to do this, that, and the third, and you start spending $115, $20 million a year on a product that's not good, it's kind of hard to do because, you can be undercut by your scouts, you can be undercut by your, assistant GMs, your director of player personnel, your director of pro personnel. You have all these issues that you wind up having because people aren't loyal in this business. And I think, agents are right. I think, they understand the game at a really, really high level. They got to be on the ground recruiting these guys for 4 years, sometimes even before the GMs get to them. And I think they do a really good job of assessing talent and having the ability to move and position players in particular places. My issue with it is that it's almost like athletes running to the television side, pretending that they know everything about being a sports announcer. Some kids go to school and do, communications all the time and they work on their craft. And next thing you know, John Spencer comes out, no, formal communications degree. And I roll right into a television studio and I get a job working at ESPN Star TV in Hong Kong. But then it puts somebody else out, but they can't talk the game the same way I do. So I can understand that. But very few basketball players like Terry Gannon becomes hosts. So you have the host and the announcers and you have your color analysts. But on that side, general managers, they're responsible for a lot of stuff. And, I look at all the guys who are in that position right now. I don't envy them at all. Matter of fact, Leon Rose and I are really, really cool. And, we've fought over players. But at the end of the day, I think he's got the right people around him. And I think that, why not? But for me personally, I don't want that level of exposure. And I like having the autonomy to call the shots and not have to worry about answering to how many ever fans that the Knicks might have around the world. I just don't want that problem.
And that's totally understandable because in a lot of these positions, like coaching and general manager especially, it's really a truism that you're hired to get fired sometimes. Like sometimes they're bringing you in and they're like, let's rebuild the pieces. For example, with Mark Jackson, right? It's like, well, you've done a good enough job, but we're ready to go to that next championship phase. And then they get rid of you, even though,
Right.
there's nothing inherently you're doing wrong within the organization.
Right. And Mark's a bright, brilliant guy. And I think he's did a wonderful job. And sometimes it's your style that really hinders the development and growth of a team. It's not that you can't coach them to a championship, but sometimes you just rub players the wrong way. And as a player, I removed my ego. My job was to win. It wasn't about me. And if you talk to anybody I've ever played with, I don't think I was ever the best player on any team I've ever played on. If you ask someone in my high school if I was one of the top 5 players ever in my high school, they're like, hell no. College, oh, fuck no. But if you look at my longevity of my career, I played over 16 years. So my ego, I had to shut it down. I was a rebounder and a defender first. Then I learned to become a scorer. Then I learned to become all of it. So, going from working as an agent, because as an agent, you have to be a scout. You have to manage contracts. You have to understand the collective bargaining agreement. You have to understand how to budget. And I think that transition prepares an agent for that job. But I also think that when you are have a relationship in the front office already and you groom through the system, you kind of get narrow-sighted about what it is you're looking for, because you become a, how do you call it, the stereotypical model of what this particular organization wants something to look and feel like, and that's when teams begin to go south. So a lot of times you begin to see that wheel turn because everybody's doing everything the same way, and it's just like an engine. If you don't change those spark plugs, if you don't change the oil, the engine's going to wind up cracking. And I think that's what you wind up seeing in a lot of places. So I think agents bring something a little bit different to the table.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And, speaking of, developing your game and growing up with the game of basketball, I wanted to ask you, and I love to ask this to any former players, but growing up, what NBA players did you grow up idolizing?
Wow. In high school, we had different color jerseys for home and away, white for home, blue for away. And we had alternate numbers because 52, 53 for me. Buck Williams was number 52. And Buck grew up in Rocky Mountain, North Carolina, less than 50 miles from where I'm from. And 53 was Daryl Dawkins, who was in the NBA at the time. So I grew up watching those. And those guys were dynamic, man. Daryl was talkative, flamboyant, aggressive, strong, powerful. And when I say powerful, I mean, the guy shattering backboards. But Buck was like this he was like this hard-working guy that you could not, when I tell you, you could not stop him because he was relentless. And so for me, I wanted to pattern my game after them. So I loved Dr. J growing up, Pete Maravich, all the
Pistol
sexy,
Pete, yes.
Yes, I mean, I loved all those guys. I mean, but at the end of the day, I didn't really want to play basketball. My brother made a $20 bet that I'd quit the varsity team before I ever even got past day one. I was a football player.
And that's foul.
Yeah, so hey, look, I made more money than he did. Just trust me. But, I played football growing up. And after my high school basketball coach, my sophomore year, he told my mom, hey, we don't want him playing football anymore. I could have been the best tight end in the country. And, but, that's a story that's long gone. But, at the end of the day, football was always my first love. And so I played basketball like a football player. So Daryl was aggressive. Buck was aggressive. But, we had a young man in our conference named Michael Jordan that I watched play growing up. And Michael was pretty damn good. And, they never beat us. They never won against our high school. And not when he was playing. I mean, they beat, his high school in recent years or whatever. But in Michael's time in Wilmington, could never beat us. Matter of fact, he had a teammate at UNC named Cecil Exum, who's Dante Exum's father, who actually wound up winning the state championship Michael's senior year. And Cecil went to Carolina, Michael went to Carolina, but, Michael becomes Michael, and Cecil goes to Australia and plays basketball, and his son's in the NBA now. So, never really cared about any other players other than those two guys, really. But Magic Johnson, Larry Bird made it kind of special. There's a really unique name that you guys may or may not remember that played in the NBA, but I fell in love with him and one of his teammates when they were in college. I think Duke played the University of Kentucky in the NCAA tournament back in the late 70s. There's a guy named Eugene Banks.
Eugene Banks.
Eugene Banks. He was out of Philadelphia, played his ass off. When I tell you, just hard-nosed, hard-working guy, couldn't stop him, relentless. Guys like that, Mike Jaminski, you know, big, tall, white dude that could just flat out play and had no problems putting elbows in your face. So I looked at guys like that who were really blue-collar workers who made the game a lot of fun.
Yeah, and do you think, you know, the narrative of this game really being a lot tougher back then than now when you have the three-point shooting and you have a lot of the foul calls, do you think there's a lot of realism to that?
I try to understand evolution more than anything. And so when you say it was tough back then, I mean, I got a couple of chipped teeth. Matumbo actually got me here in the summer league, man, back in Washington, D.C. at the Kenner League at Georgetown. Oh, God, hit me hard. Broken fingers, I mean, all types of stuff in the middle of a game. Fights, I mean, you're talking about real fights. I haven't seen a fight in the NBA in a long time. Yeah, it was tough. It was really, really tough. And I played that way when I was overseas as well, too. I was an antagonistic idiot. But it was more of a mental battle. But I would say that the game right now is extremely difficult as well, too, even though it's not as physical, because now you have to do all the things you have to do without impeding a person's movement or growth. Mm-hmm. So when someone wants to go to the basket, you really got to move your feet.
Right.
The problem is you can't put your hands on them, you can't guide them, you can't wedge them out with your elbows, you can't do anything. So now it's a lot tougher to guard and defend, which some people say it makes it easier for the offensive player, but with the way they're rotating in defense right now, with the quickness and the ability, athleticism, and the agility, it's just a whole different game. So right. It's totally different, but I think the game is pretty hard right now. So
it's just like a different game and different skill set, but right. You know, not necessarily one way is easier or harder. Right. And if you ask me about football, I'm like, yo, this is some weak stuff right here. It's a whole different story because football is supposed to be aggressive. Basketball is supposed to be a non-contact sport. But I would say that basketball is forever changing. And one of the things that I can draw on that I thought was really, really interesting is that when NBA players who got cut from the NBA and they came to Europe, I would eat them alive. I would absolutely destroy them. I couldn't wait to get to them because they all had this NBA and the thing, and they would probably make a little bit more money than us, and they walked around like they had all this swag. And I was like, okay, I'll tell them, hey, no, I'm about to get 31 and 21. And they're going to be like, no, you're not. Done. So, you know, at the end of the day, you know, the NBA is a great basketball league, but what makes the league great and difficult is that the ones who play really, really well, they always have their motor turned on. That's the difference between the NBA then versus the NBA now. Now, your motor always have to be turned on. And Europe can't compete. And, you know, I think these players right now, they play so hard. They really, really, really play hard. You know, Dennis Rodman was that guy. He made it sexy to be a hard-working motor guy, and Lance Thomas emulated that. You look at Clint Capella, he's a motor guy. P.J. Tucker, motor guy. You know, Draymond Green, motor guy. Everybody needs that motor guy in order to win. So, you know, people don't see this, but Robert Horry is the all-time motor guy. You know, he was that dude, Charles Oakley, motor guy. So you need that in basketball, and right now, everybody has their motor turned on because they want to stay on the court. Yeah, it's tough. You got to fight for your place on the court for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know, speaking of motor guys, Clint Capella, he was really the guy that gave the Warriors so much trouble. You talk about going to a Game 7 and possibly winning with Chris Paul and Harden. It was really Clint Capella that was that X factor in that 2018 Conference Final Series. That was probably the most entertaining non-NBA final scene I've ever watched.
Yeah, you know, That trade for me was kind of hard. I like Houston. I have very good relationships with the Rockets organization. A lot of them are personal. It's not just basketball. I've known quite a few of those guys for a really, really, really long time. And seeing Clint go for me was like, okay, I know you need more wing scoring and defending, right?
Right.
But what are you going to sacrifice in the playoffs when it's time to go out and defend? Because now big man basketball comes back in the playoffs. And you got to have that. So having PJ Tucker to go out and play that particular role is going to be really hard. But Rob Covington is an excellent pickup for them. So even though I'm going to personally miss Clint Capella, I'm going to enjoy watching Rob Covington play because he can not only defend, especially on the weak side, he gets his hands in the passing lane, gets his hands on a lot of loose balls, a lot of steals, extremely athletic, shoots the three very, very well. And he can rebound and push the ball up the court. And he's not afraid to take the shot. Okay, James Harden's here. Russell Westbrook's over here. I got the ball. I'm going to shoot it. He's not afraid to do that. So he makes it easier for them to play their game.
Yeah, and he's definitely going to be a big contributor to the Hawks, as Shree mentions in the comments. He's going to be really valuable for that team culture, Clint Capella I'm referring to, because in Houston, he's already had that deep playoff experience. And you look at guys like Trae Young and Bertans, these guys need veteran leadership in the locker room about, not just playing the game well, but outworking your opponent.
Bertans is a really, really, really solid basketball player. And I don't know what happened with him in his previous team, but that kid can absolutely play. And I have to say, Trae Young has actually shocked me because I knew he could play, but he's going to surprise some people in a couple of years. I think everyone talks about Luka and how bad the trade could have been, but I'm going to tell you, I'm always a cynic in the beginning anyway. I don't care what the player is because I want to make sure that they bring it every day. And I don't know if I was necessarily sold on Trae, but I can tell you, as God is my witness, that this kid is a dynamic personality. He works hard. He understands how to play the game. And if they can find somebody with some size on that wing that could slash and get to the basket and just do some damage and take the pressure off of him, Atlanta's going to be pretty good too.
Yeah, watch out for Atlanta. Isaiah wanted to ask you a question about Del Curry and Steph Curry, because we all know you played with Del Curry and then you've watched Steph Curry over the past couple of years.
Go ahead, John, I'm going to put you on the spotlight here. I want you to tell the audience what you told me and Steven pre-show when I asked you, you played with Del Curry. If you put Del Curry and Steph Curry right now, both of them in their primes side by side, we're talking three-point shooting contest. Who do you got in that three-point shooting contest?
Okay, well, I'm not saying this because of, having the opportunity to go to camp with Dell. I'll say this. Dell gave me a pair of size 12 Reeboks when I wore size 13 because I didn't have a shoe deal in training camp. So he gave me a pair. So I got to bust Dell out for that one. But, most people don't really understand how good of a shooter Dell really was. And I think he's just fluid with his motion. He puts no stress on his body. I think he beats his son. I think he's a focused guy, a tactician. Definitely is going to be the type of player that when you get him in that zone, you can't stop him. Plus, I think he just takes better shots. One of the problems with playing back then is that we didn't use the three-point field goal as well as teams are using them now. So going back to the evolution of basketball, if Dale would have had the opportunity to shoot 19 threes a game, Dale was cold-blooded. So I'm taking Dale all day, every day. Not that Steven's a worse shooter. I just think that he's a better basketball player than his dad. But I think his dad's just a better shooter. And I think that he's the type of guy that will probably say, Dale's, he'll probably say his son is better. But if I had to bet $100 on it and you give me a 24-year-old Stephen Curry and a 24-year-old Dale Curry, I'm taking Dale every day.
I respect the answer.
And look, I will say this, and Isaiah, I think that if you look at what the growth curve of Stephen Curry was, his injury helped him more than anything. He had that 1 year and a little bit of change to go out and just shoot the basketball. He had nothing else to do. He couldn't do anything else. So getting into the lab that way made it a little bit better for him. Now, when he torched Brandon Rush and those guys when Davidson played Kansas, I'm sitting here going, oh my God. Because I never really, I saw him play a couple of times, but I was like, all right, man, this kid can play. Then he started making an NCAA run. And I'm like, okay, he had Brandon Rush chasing him all over the court. And if you guys don't remember, Brandon Rush was one of the best defensive players in the country.
Oh, he was, yeah.
So, Brandon's a straight dog when it comes to defense. He'll lock your tail up, and it's a wrap. But just watching Dale, the guy just – Detlef, who used to play with Indiana, you go out, we talked about Dale Ellis. You look at guys like that, Reggie Miller, Allen Houston. Those guys never shot as many threes. But if you'd given it to them, hell, Larry Bird. Jim, but you have to understand, the more opportunities you take, the more opportunities you get.
Yeah.
So, I'm putting $100 on Dale.
All right, $100 on Dale. I'll take you up on that bet. I'll take Steph Curry.
I'm putting $100 on Dale.
All right. Well, last question for you before we get into the other topics is, you got into this a little bit at the beginning of the video about your sports representation firm and then also scouting for the Knicks. But I want to know, out of all the jobs you've worked in sports, being a basketball player, being a scout, being an agent, and then having this firm, which role is your favorite?
What's my favorite role? Wow. Being a basketball historian. I think all of it prepares me to have this conversation with you today. The problem with the NBA is that most players now don't watch as much basketball as we did. College players don't watch basketball. People don't know where in the hell Springfield, Massachusetts is. They don't understand that Fog Allen and that whole situation in Kansas was the epicenter for the growth of basketball. They don't understand that that's Dean Smith from Kansas to the University of North Carolina. They don't understand Wilt Chamberlain being there. They don't understand that it was a Canadian. They don't understand that there's over 100 years of basketball history in China. They don't understand that the NBA started in 1946. They don't understand the foundation that the game is built on. So when I got cut from Charlotte and I went overseas for the first time, I had a couple of opportunities to come back with 10-day contracts. And at the time, if you left Europe, you were no longer considered an amateur basketball player. Even though we were making money, they had what they call an ABA USA card, and that card gave you amateur status. If I would have left and gone to one of those teams that were interested, and I got cut after 10 days, I could not have gone back to Europe for a whole year. So if I left on December 12th and I got cut on December 25th, there's no way in God's world I would have ever gotten back to Europe until the fall. So I would have had to stay at home or play the American CBA at the time, and they were taking buses every place, and they weren't making any money. So I was like,
damn,
I'm making this kind of money, and I go over for it. It's not worth my time. So having that ABA USA card meant that basketball, you were an amateur. And I literally want to live in Europe and Asia because of the culture and being able to go back and look at historical artifacts and architecture and say, wow, basketball is providing me with another education. And I was cursing you guys out in Chinese before the show started.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you're bringing up all the Chinese legends, Yao Ming, Wang Zizi. Loved it, man.
So for me, it helps me build an opportunity to be a basketball anthologist. So just the totality of everything gave me what I've always wanted, which is the opportunity to be able to talk about a multitude of subject matter. Didn't matter if it was basketball and sports, basketball and politics, or how quirky some, players' habits were. It's just, so I think all of them gives me the opportunity to just be able to have this conversation. So I don't think there's one better than the other. I love being on the microphone in front of fans doing stand-ups and, doing promos and all this other stuff. And my first job at ESPN International, when I came back to the States, they didn't even have live telecasts of NBA games back in the early 2000s over at ESPN. So they used to take the telecast from the States and broadcast them back to Europe and in Asia. And myself, Mark Brown, John Paul Della Camera, Tate George, we do booth work and we do voiceovers over top of the live NBA feed and send it back to Asia or send it back to China. And so for me, the evolution of ESPN now getting live stuff, I'm a part of that. So everything that you and I both do is like making history in sports. But that history has afforded me the opportunity to speak several different languages and meet a gazillion people. So I can go down the list from playing against Vlade Divac to Johan Petrovic to Oscar Schmidt to watching Sasha Danilovic to, oh God, we could just keep going on and on and on and on and on. Even Dennis Schrader from Germany as an agent, I had a player from University of West Virginia named Casey Mitchell, who played with Schroeder over in Germany. So I get a phone call from Wes Wilcox, like, hey, I know you've been over there. You saw Dennis play. What do you think? I'm an agent, but I'm giving him intel on a player that he has yet to see that one of my players is playing with. So, even Killian Hayes, who's coming over now, his dad, Deron Hayes, knowing him since, you know what I'm saying? So Tony Parker's dad. So you get a chance to meet a lot of people and grow your network at the same time. And now you become a part of a fraternity that will never die. And if you go into one of my discussions one day, we had, Michael Graham, Derek Gervin, which is George Gervin's brother. We talk about guys like Roland Gray, Chris Childs. I mean, we can just keep going on and on and on. And so that relationship aspect of the game is the most important role that we serve. We serve as ambassadors to the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. All the basketball history, all the world history, and then like you said, the fraternity brotherhood network that you join in basketball. As fans in China would say, 很好. Very good, very good. So let's get into a little bit of, today's basketball topics. Isaiah and I wanted to talk a little bit about the New York Knicks, seeing as, you've scouted for them before, and now they're thinking about bringing Tom Thibodeau in. What are your initial thoughts on that?
I'll get ready to have some discipline and a cultural change, and excellent basketball mind, excellent coach, strategic, hard worker. I think, bringing Tibbs in, he's a former New York Knick as well, too. I mean, I think he's been on the bench with the Knicks before. He's just that dude, man. And, he had a little bit of a problem in Minnesota, had too much power. Anytime you get that kind of power and you're coaching, you have to do all things. See what happens with Doc Rivers. Doc had it. They brought it back in. So now Doc's doing a great job. It's kind of hard to try to process contracts and player attitudes at the same time because now there's no buffer. So having this buffer with Leon and Scott, I think is going to be great. And then they just hired Walt Perrin over from the Utah Jazz to come in and work. Walt Perrin is one of the greatest basketball minds in the business. He's been with Utah forever. But if they are all on the same accord and having a guy who's a disciplinarian who's not afraid to call out a player, I personally like that type of style. I know he'll drive you through the wall. And if they can't deal with it, they'll ship him out of there. And so I think that he will go out and attract better ball players. Guys like Dennis Smith will shape up or ship out, so to speak. Mitchell Robinson, who I had for about 35, 40 days, it was just, his situation was just kind of crazy and erratic. And he's had about 9 agents in 2 years. if they can get Mitchell to expand, and I know he's expanding his game. I know personally that he's expanding his game. But if they can allow for him to become the player that he can become, he could be better than Kevin Garnett if they give him the opportunity, because he can step out and shoot it. He can really step out and play. And I need to take that back. He can't be better than Kevin Garnett, because Kevin Garnett got something up here that ain't nobody else I've ever seen have. So I apologize. So let me take that back. I'll walk that one back really quick. He can be as good as Kevin Garnett.
Okay.
If he develops his mindset to become tougher in the way that he approaches the game, and he becomes more mature as a player. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with Alonzo Trier more so than anything, because the guy can get buckets all day, every day, and they definitely could have used him. You know, they got guys on the team like Reggie Bullock who, what's going to be his role, next year. So you got to figure out the role players. You're looking at Julius Randle, monster of a basketball player. I mean, you just can't ask for anything more out of a talent. He's just been shopped around because he just can't find a home. I hope this is the place that he can call home. And the guy that I think can be a much better basketball player, and this is what I tell, some of the players that I actually try to recruit, sometimes it's not your agent. Sometimes it is your agent, but sometimes it's not your skill. Sometimes it's your mouthpiece. It's who's talking for you and who's talking to you. Because at the end of the day, if you got all the talent in the world and you're underperforming, it's you at the end of the day. And he's really super duper talented. And I just expect more. I didn't expect for him to come in and blow everybody away. I just know there's a lot of talent in him. And I think that he can turn the corner. He's one of the guys I truly believe he can turn the corner. You take a look at Frank. I'm not sold on a lot of European guards who come over and play in this league. He has to earn it. Barrett.
Barrett out of Duke.
Huh?
Barrett out of Duke he's raw.
Yeah, he's extremely raw. And I think he's good. And I didn't know him from a hill of beans when we were in Vegas at the Summer League. And he had a slow start, and I went over to him. I just said, hey, look, here's the deal. You don't know me from a hill of beans, but I used to work for the Knicks. And I will share this with you. If you want to play this game, play the game. Stop trying to be what everybody else wants you to be, and be yourself. Right. And if he ever finds out who he is as a player, he's going to be that dude. But right now, I don't think he really has an idea of who he really is. But I think it'll come. But I think the Knicks need to find a sexy three. They need to find somebody that can shoot the ball like Allen Houston and handle the basketball like Mark Jackson and have an attitude like Chris Childs. So that's what I think. That's what the Knicks really need. And I think having that coach will bring that mentality and that toughness to the team.
So with that being said, right now we're having one of the best drafts coming up. You got guys like LaMelo Ball coming in and a couple of other big names. Where do you think the Knicks should go with this draft pick?
I think they should sell it. I think they should find a way to position themselves with a really cool free agent right now, or sign and trade and bring somebody in that can get this stuff started right away. The draft picks, they look good on paper, and it's nice to build through the draft. They look really, really good. But they've tried that year after year after year after year after year after year. And I've never been a fan of just taking a lot of young talent and just and trying to build around that young talent. Now, you mentioned LaMelo Ball. I think he's an absolute dog.
Oh, me too, man. Me too.
Huh?
This guy loves LaMelo Ball. He thinks LaMelo Ball is like the savior of the Warriors.
Hey, I tell you, he might be. The guy's good. And I wasn't a hater on his brother. I just didn't like his jumper because I'm a mechanics guy. I like form and I can't deal with it. But he can play, and he's super duper athletic. But his brother LaMelo, he's got something a little bit different in his game. Now, he would bring nothing but straight hype to New York. And I think that if they can get rid of all those other guys that they got and bring in some veterans around him that are guards that are pretty good, I think I take a chance on him, but not unless I got an agreement with some other team that's going to give me somebody that can help groom him. I like some guy. I wish the Knicks could go get Patrick Beverly and have LaMelo Ball.
I would love that.
Patrick Beverly.
That's who I think he is a perfect example of what a teammate should be, because he's going to put you in check. He's going to run the system where you want to run it, and he's going to play you 94-50, and he brings it. I think having him and a guy like LaMelo that they can kind of bounce things off of one another would be really, really good. Now Isaiah's right. LaMelo in Golden State would be a problem.
Yeah. And he'd have an amazing mentor in Steph Curry as well.
Yeah. And Golden State has to make some kind of a move because all those guys are getting old. And, injuries happen. And I think that that's one of the things that really they need to really be cognizant of is that, they're going to go after players that are improving right now. But the Knicks, on the other hand, who cares if injuries happen to the Knicks because
they got nothing to play with.
They got nothing to play with. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, I think Leon understands the game. And I think he's a good dude. I think he's the type of person that the players can actually have a real relationship with. And anytime you can have a real relationship with management and you can be truthful with your team, I think that builds trust. And I don't think there's a lot of trust in New York right now. And trust is the key to having anything to go the right way. It doesn't matter if you're married or if you have a girlfriend, or even if your car, you got to trust your car can get you from point A to point B. If not, you don't want to drive the car. So yeah. I think that the Knicks, from a draft standpoint, I think they should take somebody that can really flat out score and handle and set everybody else up at the same time. They need that. And somebody that's not afraid to step up and do whatever. Barrett and LaMelo at the same time, it pushes Barrett back over to the 2, where he could really be more effective, I think. I don't think he's a 1, not at all. But if you look at everybody else, they got pieces. They have a lot of good pieces. They just need to be able to get rid of some stuff that doesn't make any sense. It's like putting too much salt in your spaghetti. The shit doesn't taste good.
Right. Too much of anything is definitely a problem. Right. And you mentioned like bringing in a veteran presence to really stabilize the team, get them winning right now. Because, while the picks look good, you got to get someone in there to really help out the culture and help these players to winning. But like just as you mentioned that sometimes you can have coaches who have too much power, like Tom Thibodeau in Minnesota and then Doc Rivers for the first couple of years on the LA Clippers. How can you prevent that kind of power trip that Minnesota also had with a player like Jimmy Butler? Because they shopped their top draft pick and they got their superstar or star player in Butler to come in, but then he came into the Wolves and he just really had too much input on the team and forced the young guys to kind of lose motivation on that game.
We have this saying that punks jump up to get shot down. And what I mean by that is that if you are a basketball player and you really want to win, if you got a guy that's going to help lead you to where you need to be, figure it out. And Jimmy wanted to win. And I met him a couple of times when he was younger. I met him at the PIT in Portsmouth, actually. Really, really great guy. I don't think he's really that difficult of a person to get along with. But then again, I'm not there intimately either, so I really don't know. So, but what I will say is that I've often had this conversation with some of my friends who are general managers, presidents, scouts, and I have the misfortune of actually seeing basketball from both sides. And so I understand both sides of the coin. Players, I thought, always had too much power after Michael Jordan. I think Michael did not use his influence as much as he could have. But I think if you go back and look at guys like Magic and Larry Bird, they kind of worked with the team to get certain things done. And they had a lot of power, at the same time, because Magic and Larry Bird, they are the epitome of putting the league on good ground. So I would use those two guys. They had a lot of power that they wielded, but they had strong organizations already. You're talking about the Buss family and, oh my God, and Jerry West with Magic. It's like, who's going to tell Jerry West what to do?
Yeah.
And if you look at Boston and the history of the Celtics, you're talking about Red Auerbach. And then their system has been put in place forever. Danny Ainge and those guys are doing a great job of following that same tradition of, having their team led by who's supposed to lead the team. Players can come, players can go, but they're not going to let people dictate their business. And they've always had great teams. So LA, they started having some ego trips and some power trips and, power struggles, and you see them suffer a little bit. But let's talk about the Golden State Warriors when you talk about that. Let's just talk about egos. You got Draymond Green. He's nothing without Steph and Clay. Well, Clay ain't really that much without Draymond and Steph, and they all need each other. You see what I'm saying?
Interdependency.
Right. And so for me, it's not that they're not great basketball players, because they are. But they are a unit. And no one's trying to take somebody else's shine. They're not running up to the office and calling Bob and be like, yo, you need to call Mr. Lacob and tell him I need to have X, Y, Z. Or, I think that's one of the potential problems that could have been there with the ego of Kevin Durant. So LeBron can get away with it because he's LeBron. But guess what? In Cleveland, they was like, nope, you're not running this. I don't care what you do. You're not running it. But he had his run of the mill for a little bit. He got David Black fired, who's a really good friend of mine that I met when I was playing in Israel, and I've known him for a long, long time. And you look at what happened down in Miami, who's going to overrun Pat Riley? Nobody. So, exactly. So there is a sense of excellence that comes in with a team that has a good organizational structure from the top all the way down. You go to LA, it was kind of a shambles with Magic and Rob Pelinka running it at the same time. And so now, it's kind of on the right track. We're going to see what happens. But the egos have to go, as far as I'm concerned, because the management's position or the executive's position is to pay you your salary and make sure the teams win. They get the directives from the owner of the team. But if you want to tell everybody what to do, go buy the team.
Right. And that's what Michael Jordan did. He went ahead and bought the Charlotte Hornets, or Charlotte Bobcats, who became the Hornets now.
Well, even before that, he bought an interest in the Washington Wizards, even before that.
Right.
So
exactly.
Michael wanted to have some influence on the team. But when you do that, you also better make sure that you surround yourself with people that's not just going to say yes. They're going to give you the best advice, and hopefully people listen. And, I'll go back to, about this power kick. James Harden has a lot of power.
Yeah,
does it marginalize Russell Westbrook right now? Not really. Russ could have had anything he wanted in Oklahoma City. He could have. KD could have had anything he wanted in Oklahoma City. So if you want that power and you already got it, don't give it up. You got it. But I think Jimmy Butler, I think he wants to win really, really badly. I think he really wants a championship. And until he wins one, he'll never have the power that he wants. But he's in the right spot because he's with a great franchise. He's got a great coach. He's got great executives. He's got a great training staff. He got a great lifestyle. So when you got all that wrapped up into one, he's in a really, really good situation.
And I think, overall, we can disagree or agree with Jimmy Butler's methods, but the fact is every single team that he has left has gone into shambles. Every single team he's left has become worse without him and become better with him. So as much as you can say or can't say about Butler, he's improved the teams when he's been around them.
Every place he's ever been. And he's that never say die, hard-nosed guy.
Yeah,
I love that guy. He's not going to let you outwork him. He's not. Now, for me personally, I grew up a Philadelphia 76ers fan and a Clippers fan. So I had my Clippers on the West Coast, my Sixers on the East Coast. Mind you, they both had the same colors. Michael Cage was my man who played for the Clippers back in the day. But I'll say that, I wish he'd have stayed in Philadelphia. Him and Rob Covington.
That would have been
I want to
really
see those two play
special.
together.
That would have been a special playoff run if he did, especially this year.
Yeah, if they could find a way to have him and Covington on the same squad and Joel Embiid. Now, if Joel Embiid grows up, man, he needs to grow up. To grow up. He's that dude. He's that dude right now, but he's got to grow up. And he's got to lead a different way in order for people to take him serious. Big guys playing to the fans like that, with Shaq and, some of the other guys who like to go out and do that stuff. Shaq was a monster. He could get away with it, and he's got championships all over the place. But playing to the crowd when you win. Right now, I'm not focused on anything, and that just may be being old, but, he needs to just focus in on playing for his teammates.
I 100% agree, and I'll be really excited to see where the Knicks and the Sixers and all these young teams move forward. But I wanted to jump to Isaiah really quickly. Isaiah, your thoughts on the Tom Thibodeau potential move, and then also where the Knicks should go in the draft.
Yeah, John, really great point about Tom Thibodeau, but I got to respectfully disagree. I think the guy that the New York Knicks should target is some guy like a Kenny Atkinson, former Brooklyn Nets coach, or a Mark Jackson, a guy that can come in, change the culture, and develop these young players that the Knicks have. They have this young nucleus with Barrett, like you mentioned, Kevin Knox, Frank Ntilikina, and I feel like they got to get these young players developed, get that young nucleus developed, and then stars will start coming to the New York Knicks because, we've seen in the past where the New York Knicks just try to jump steps and then try to get stars, but then end up they don't come because it's just going to be the stars. You don't really have good role players around them. Like that's why KD and Kyrie went to Brooklyn, because you already got a great nucleus and a great role players around them, like Dinwiddie and Joe Harris and those guys. So I really think the Knicks should go after a Kenny Atkinson or a Mark Jackson. But the thing I want to respond to your thing that you told RJ Barrett, which was just play the game, don't care about what other people expect from you. I feel like that applies to Lonzo Ball because, Lonzo Ball, his dad, when he came into the NBA, put a lot of pressure on him, saying he was better than Stephen Curry and better than all these other superstars in the NBA. And I just feel like right now, I think Lonzo, he's struggling to find out who he really is. Is he really a passer? Is he a guy that will score 25 plus points a game? He just doesn't really know his identity as an NBA player. And I feel like once he finds that identity, then he will become that star that everybody expected him to be.
Isaiah, I'm going to go back to Kenny Atkinson first. I don't necessarily disagree with you on that. I think he's an excellent basketball coach. I think there are quite a few guys in the NBA right now that I would probably take a look at before him. Matter of fact, honestly, if I was a Knicks, I'd go back and get David Black because I think David Black can really coach it. He's done nothing but win, and develop world champions in Europe, and he never really got a shot here in the States. And he's very personable. He's a Princeton graduate. Who cares if he was friends with Steve Mills? I mean, that's just what it is. But this guy can coach. He can absolutely coach it. If you ask me if Kenny can coach too. But at the end of the day, I've seen a proven champion in David Black, and I think he will have the respect of everybody in the locker room. But there's a name I want to throw out there, and this thing will never come to light. I want you guys to look up one of the guys who sat on the back of the Cleveland bench. And, I'm going to have to go out and pull this up for you and see if you know who this guy is. Oh my gosh, I have brain lock now. Oh, from California, used to work with the Lakers, trained Steve Nash. Oh my gosh, I have brain lock. I can't believe it. That's what happens when you get old. But he back of the bench with the Cleveland Cavaliers when LeBron and them won the championship, and they need these type of. Let me pull up. Oh my gosh, hold that thought for 1 second because this is bothering me now.
Right,
John, are
right,
you
right.
talking about Byron Scott?
No, I'm talking about a trainer. Oh my gosh. Hold on, I'll tell you in 2 seconds. I just texted the other day and I don't know why in the world. What's the Canadian point guard name that played for Dallas with the hair? Steve Nash? He trained
Yes.
Nash.
Yes, Steve
Hold
Nash.
Hold on, I'll tell you in 2 seconds. Oh my gosh, I have brain lock. We'll get back to it. But what I'm saying is that you got to have guys on the bench that can actually get the best out of players that they respect in the locker room. I don't know. It's just gonna bother me until I actually pull it up. But when you have guys that can do things in the locker room that some players and some coaches can't do, then it becomes a real problem in your locker room. So sometimes the head coach is not really the most important element of a team. I think your assistant coaches and your player development guys are huge because they get a chance to walk into the gym on days where the coaches are having meetings, putting up scouting reports, and saying, "Hey, this is what I need you to work on, and this is the attitude I need to have you to have, and working on it. And I know you don't want to hear this right now, but if you want to stick around in this league, this is how you do it. If we want to win, this is what we need to do." So you need to be able to sit down, have that person's ear, and make sure that they do the things that they're supposed to be doing. And without that buffer, it becomes really, really hard. So having Thibodeau as a coach, or Kenny as a coach, or anybody else as a coach is all well and good. But at the end of the day, you have to have that respect in the locker room and on the training facilities to make sure that players are being pros all the time.
Yeah, John. One name I really want to throw at you is Mark Jackson. You know, Stephen A. Smith on First Take, he keeps advocating for Mark Jackson. Do you think Mark Jackson would be a good fit for this New York Knicks squad right now?
I'm going to ask you the same question first. You go ahead. You answer the question.
Yeah, I think he would be a good fit because in Golden State, he took over a young team with young Steph Curry, young Klay Thompson, and those guys, really changed the culture, really taught them how to play defense. And I really think the New York Knicks need a guy that can build a culture, install some discipline into it. And I think that, you know, like Stephen A. Smith says on First Take, I think that Mark Jackson will be a guy that New Yorkers could trust. They will listen to him since he played for the Knicks. He is from New York, so that's why I think Mark Jackson would be a good fit.
When was the last time Mark Jackson coached a basketball team?
Back in 2012 to 2013, 2013 to 2014. That was the last time with the Golden State Warriors.
It's 2021 right now?
2020.
No, it's going to be 2021 by the time next season comes, the end of next season, right?
Oh, yeah. End of next season,
Okay.
Yep.
So I will say this. I have nothing against Mark Jackson being a coach. Doc Rivers sat away from the bench for a long time before he became a head basketball coach. There are some things in Mark Jackson's relationship with players that evidently doesn't go over great with his coaching style versus players buying into his coaching style. So at the end of the day, I don't think that that Mark would be a great fit for a team because his coaching style would piss some people off.
No,
And that's just the bottom line, huh? And that's just me being honest, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I'm trying to pull up the guy's freaking name, driving me up the wall. It doesn't really matter what everyone else keeps saying about Mark, because the game is changing. And you need to find someone who's been inside of the game, who's been changing with the game. And Stephen A is a hype man. I'm just being honest with you. I mean, at the end of the day, he's one of those guys that actually loves to go out and scream and yell about things that make sense, don't make sense at the same time. So I'm going to go out and say, no, I'm not saying that he's not a good coach. I think he would be an excellent coach. I said, but at the end of the day, there's a cultural gap between the kids who are playing basketball right now and guys who are Mark's age. I'll give you an example. Coach winds up leaving University of Michigan, comes into the Cleveland Cavaliers, just came off a great season, gets hired. He's done halfway in the middle of the season. Yeah. I don't think it was his ability or his lack of ability to coach. I think it had to do with his lack of understanding of the cultural difference of the NBA money now versus college kids making no money and the egos that go into it. Now, when you're a former basketball player and a coach and you're coming in and you haven't been in that environment that way and you don't understand the egos that are going on, are you going to clash with a guy like Mitchell Robinson or Julius Randle? And Julius is a pretty good kid from what I understand. I don't know him personally, but I think that, personalities are just different. I mean, I got two daughters, one, 15, the other one 18. And the stuff that I used to go out and get cursed out for, I can barely say it nowadays because you start getting those egos and attitudes. So I can imagine a 17-year-old kid who's the number one pick in the draft comes out and then all of a sudden, oh gosh, who do you think you are? I got 16 million YouTube followers, Instagram followers. I don't care about you, Mark Jackson. I'm going to make money anyway. I'm an influencer and you're not. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to influence people to get you fired. So players, like you said, have a lot of power. And once the player goes out and put a tweet out, it's like, oh God, here we go. So you got to really, 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 really be careful with who the messenger is. Messaging is important, and I just don't think that he's the right person to deliver the message right now.
Yeah. So speaking of, the NBA, the season is actually going to be resuming soon. They're going to make the official announcement tomorrow, but it's expected that the NBA Finals will wrap up in early to mid-October, and we'll have the season starting around August or September. So, my question to you is, we have all these big games coming up, and, especially this will be really relevant for someone like you, John, or someone like me and Isaiah, who are big football fans. How will, the NBA compete with all these big games coming up right during playoff season for the NBA? You got the Bucks and Bears, you got LSU, Florida, Michigan State, classic rivalry there. Biggest thing is you've got MLB postseason, college football, and NFL all to compete with. How will NBA kind of get itself out there in the market in this kind of sports economy?
I think it's just a great time to be a sports fan. You got all the stuff that you need wrapped up into one. So you go out and you talking about, LSU football, Auburn football. I'm watching, college football, but different time slots for everything. Very few NFL and NBA games are played at the time slots that most of these college football games are being played. And they have their own distinct built-in fans anyway. So those people who really enjoy the NBA, they're going to watch. It's going to take a little bit of love to get them back. And one thing I do know about the NBA, they do have great marketing programs that really show how much they really care about their fans. So at the end of the day, I think they'll figure it out. I think they do a great job with social media, placing information on their fan page on Facebook, hitting people off with information through their Instagram and Twitter feeds. Their players are extremely engaged with how the teams and how the league markets the game. So you'll get spots from everybody from James Harden to Steph Curry. And people are going to be excited to see what happens because sports has been away for so long. So I think people are going to be hungry for sports. And I think the mere fact that most people watch Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson play golf with no fans around, and it was just as entertaining as having with fans there.
Yep.
I think people are starving for the opportunity to go out and get their juices flowing. So I'm just hoping that there's sports bars that can be open during this time, especially with Major League Baseball coming in and just having college football. And don't forget, college basketball is right around the corner at the same time too.
Oh, yeah.
And hockey.
Let's go Ohio State.
Hey, look, man, like I said, it's all around. And then we still haven't talked about getting those tennis rackets back out again and having people involved and engaged with what's going to happen with Wilmington, the Australian Open, the French, and the U.S. Open. So, there's a lot of things going on around that time, and they have to compress the tennis circuit. So I think the NBA, they got a pretty good problem, to have. And I think that's the type of problem that I'd like to deal with. And I think the season ticket holders come out in full force. And I think everybody's going to want to go out and see if LeBron James could beat Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, and speaking of all of that, I think the big thing the NBA benefits from, John and Isaiah, is that the NBA is largely narrative driven. When we look at the NFL and we look at the NCAA, not to say that the players don't have a lot of power and a huge narrative and a huge story to overcome. Like we've seen guys like Tim Tebow, Tom Brady with amazing personal stories in college and NFL football. But the NBA, more than any other sport, is driven almost like a movie. Like you got your super villains like Kevin Durant in Golden State last season and a couple seasons before. And then you have people who are trying to rise to the top, chase the ghost of MJ and LeBron. And I think as long as we get a final season and a playoff season that's pretty compelling as far as the narrative, we're going to be fine, John. Like if we get Giannis versus LeBron in the finals, can you imagine the media magnitude that would generate? You have the chosen one in LeBron James going up against perhaps his successor in Giannis Antetokounmpo. One guy's trying to battle his way into the NBA greats and Giannis. The other guy's trying to move up that list and really take it to MJ.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And I don't like to throw marketing pitches out there for anybody, but one of the wonderful things that Nike and the NBA will do better than any brand I've ever seen is that they very seldom have to talk about their brand. But what they do is that they talk about the messaging within their brand. And I use Nike first. If you go out and watch a Nike commercial, very seldom do you ever hear them mention Nike in the commercial. They'll tell a story.
That's true.
And that story becomes an engaging and an intriguing testimony to how people overcome. And Nike just so happened to be a part of it. So people want to affiliate themselves with the product or associate themselves with the product because they can identify with the struggle that they see. Apple Watch or Apple phone, iPhone, they just go out and just post a whole bunch of sexy images online and they scroll through this thing really fast, really sexy, really quick. The messaging is like boom, 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 boom. It's there. The NBA is a lot the same way. Oh, you just said it, Giannis versus, the Greek freak. Giannis versus Joel Embiid, or Jason Tatum versus Kawhi, or Kyrie's back. You don't have to say watch the NBA after that because all these guys now, they have one name, first name recognition, and they can go out and market the league without ever mentioning the NBA. So there's a structure that's been set in place for a long time to make the game its core product and not the label of the brand. And I think that, David Stern, God bless his soul, Adam Silver, Mark Tatum, all those guys, they've had this messaging going on and it works. So they got some of the best and bright basketball minds in the game. I think the teams are extremely talented in the way they position their image in the streets, on social media, on the radio. It doesn't matter. But you have something that football can't compete with from time to time. And I'll tell you what that is. That's a game every night.
Yeah.
A game every night. I mean, I'm not talking about college football, I'm talking about NFL, Monday, Sunday, Thursday, and that's fine. But the NBA, it's just a little bit different demon.
Yeah, no doubt. Isaiah, you had a question about, moving into the NBA season specifically, these players haven't had as much time to prepare. So, Isaiah, ask your question about the dark horse underdogs.
Yeah, so John, I asked Mark Medina, who came on our show last week, about how he thinks if with this long layoff that all the NBA teams have experienced, with this long layoff, would a dark horse team like the Celtics or the Rockets or even the 76ers, could they potentially upset the favorites like the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Bucks and win the NBA championship? What do you think? Do you think like we could see a team that people aren't really looking at right now that could upset either the Lakers, the Clippers, or Bucks because of this long layoff?
Who's the oldest team out of the top 16 contenders? Who has the oldest average age? Because those are the ones who are going to suffer the most, in my opinion.
I'm going to guess the Los Angeles Lakers.
Okay,
yeah, I
so
think it's the Lakers as well.
Yeah, so you look at the body and not having played in a while, and now extending this season because players are finding a way to work out if they got a home or someplace. Now they're putting all that poundage and pressure on their bodies, and now we're going to start the season in October. I mean, in September or August or whatever, and we go through October to finish the playoffs. They're really putting over a year of pounding on their body because nobody's just sitting at home. So everybody, all these players are finding a way to work out and do something. So now you still got all that stress on your body.
Ooh.
You still got that. So at the end of the day, who's going to stay healthy? Everybody might be healthy right now, but I'm telling you, sitting at home for 18 hours, 19 hours, 20 hours a day as an older guy, and your body's stiffening up and all these things happen, and when you get back on the court, you start moving all over again, there's wear and tear. But then you put that other 2.5 hours, 3 hours of pounding on your body, then you add it. You have the ultimate dichotomy. You got one side of the body stiff and don't want to move. You got the other side where's the body saying, hey, I'm moving. And then you got to finish the league at the same time. But the mental wear and tear of sitting down and trying to figure out what the next step is going to be one of those things that's going to disrupt a team, because somebody's going to say, okay, well, if we're playing through October, well, damn, when does the regular season start for next year? So they start projecting all the other images of the future. And, they're going to be worried about if the NBA is going to change the CBA or stay with what they already have. A lot of things come into play mentally, not just physically. But if I just had to talk about the physical aspect of the game, the dark horse, I mean, Miami.
Ooh, Jimmy Butler.
I look at Miami. They're playing well. Nobody's talking about them. They're good. They got some buzz. Nobody's really, really talking about them. And I hate the fact that Hassan Whiteside is not there, because had he had his stuff together,
oh my God,
this squad that they have right now,
oh my gosh,
so they got a team.
It's going to be an interesting season. I'm definitely tuning in, John, and definitely be happy to have you on the show again sometime. But last question for you: early pick to win the title. If the season ended today, who you picking to take that chip home?
You put me on the spot because I got players that play for different teams. And now I got to go out on live streaming over Facebook that's going out to your 100 million viewers around the world who my pick is, and I'm beat up by a whole bunch of people. I can tell you who I really believe got a legitimate shot at winning this thing.
Okay. Yeah, you can think about it and just let us know, who you think's got a good shot.
I think it's the Clippers. I think having
Mm.
Kawhi healthy, Paul George healthy, uh, Patrick Beverly healthy, all at the same time
Wow.
is just a monster of a team to have. But the X factor is Montrezl Harrell, and he comes off the bench with his motor wide open. He rebounds, he scores, he pushes the ball up the court. He puts his teammates in check. He's a young guy.
Yeah.
He still puts them in check. So at the end of the day, he's grown up. You can see the maturity of him this year. Last year and the year before, he was a little bit young in the way that he actually managed the locker room and his relationship with teammates and everything. It can be a bit erratic from time to time, but he's grown up. And I
No doubt.
think he's the X factor. Everybody has a great uh, starting five for their team. But when you have guys like Montrez that comes in and brings you that extra effort, and he gets the fans involved, Draymond can't cope with the way Montrez's energy is. So I think Montrez is a poor man's version of Draymond Green, but just a different level of energy than Draymond. Draymond has a lot of energy, but Montrez's energy is really off the charts. The second team, honestly, if they could ever really figure it out, is Milwaukee. They got it.
Yeah.
They
Mm.
got
Giannis, exactly.
they don't need another piece. And Chris Middleton is that dude. Everybody can talk about Giannis all day long, but Chris Middleton is really that dude. But the X factor for me, out of all of them, and we were talking about dark horses, and I mentioned Miami. You can't sleep on Toronto. You can't. You can't. And their X factor is a guy named Terrence Davis. I think he's a really, really, really talented dude. And, a lot of success coming out of the summer league, playing not even a full game and getting a 2-year deal. They knew what they were doing and getting this young kid. He's going to be a pretty talented basketball player down the line. But they got some pieces to the puzzle. And I think that, Kawhi was a big part of their championship run. But they got to keep their heads to the ground. I like Van Vliet. I just like the way they play together as a team. And but Miami, my dark horse, Clippers, is the team that I think they're really the team to be. And no disrespect to Houston, because I really, really love Houston as well too. It's just, for me, it's kind of hard to see them matching up with a guy that's 6'9", 6'10", like Paul George, who can play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if he had to, because it's small ball basketball. And I think he can, pretty much do it all. And then having a guy like Kawhi, who always steps his game up in the playoffs. I don't care when it is. He just plays at a different level. And he carries teams. So he had big, broad shoulders, man. Big hands, big, long arms, broad shoulders, big attitude.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the playoffs for sure. And, both Isaiah and I got the Lakers winning it, but I wouldn't mind seeing a Kawhi Giannis rematch in the finals. That would be something to see.
Hold on. Why the Lakers?
I just see they got the best player in the world in LeBron James. He can do everything from scoring to distributing the ball. He's got the playoff and finals pedigree. This guy's been in the finals so many times. And then you look at Anthony Davis, the tandem of LeBron and Anthony Davis. That's amazing.
So the rumor is that Anthony Davis may be leaving next year. Okay,
Whoa.
you talk about LeBron being the best player in the world. Why can't he keep quality people around him if he's the best player in the world? And number two, he's probably one of the worst defenders as a superstar that I've ever seen. He's lazy on defense. He doesn't get back in transition. He will not help on the weak side, and he shoots free throws like this. He's the person that chokes at the end of every game. And he does a really, really poor job executing in clutch time at the free throw line. And I can't take LeBron because he doesn't commit, in my opinion, to playing defense on every possession in the playoffs the way that he should. Never stop Michael, never stop Scottie Pippen, never stop anybody on the Detroit Pistons team. You look at the Lakers back in the day with Byron Scott and those guys, they all played defense 48 minutes of a game. So they gave their all. And if you go back and you do your homework on LeBron and just take a look at some of his defensive lapses, it's caused him a lot of championships. So, there's some players right now who has more championships than him, still playing, that he's the best talented basketball player in the world. But, I like teams and players that play defense and win. And that's the thing I like about Golden State. They always play defense. They play hard. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league. And they help each other out. So, if LeBron plays defense, yeah, they'll win. But I can't see him breaking this thing down to a point whereas he's not going to sell Anthony Davis out and Anthony Davis gets into foul trouble because somebody gets to the basket off the weak side and he has to go out and help and he's getting in foul trouble. And then LeBron's going to be pounding, throwing his hands up like, yo, what happened? While the team is going down the other way. Somebody misses a foul, LeBron's pouting. Got no problem with LeBron. I think he's that dude. I mean, there's no question he's the best player on the planet. But, I think the best always get the best out of the others. The best leaders in the world always get the best out of others.
And that's tough to argue with. I will say this about LeBron James. When it comes to defense, offense, every facet of his game, he seems to just turn it on to a different level in the playoffs. We saw him doing it against Golden State multiple times, especially in 2016. And I think with the help of Anthony Davis, he could still very much be a big factor in those facets of the game when it all counts. The biggest thing for him is, he's getting up there in age, John. And I think being the best player in the world and have to shoulder that load, he's got to take a little bit of a rest from it in the regular season.
They all count.
But he does it.
All the games count. That's what I'm saying. Why take a play off? You look. What's his record in the playoffs? In the finals, 3-6.
3-6.
He's 3-6 in the finals, right? He should be what?
I think 5-4 or 4-5.
I think he should be 7-2.
Wow.
I think he should be 7-2. I think he's that good that he should have been 7-2. But personality and ego can sometimes get in the way, and taking a playoff will kill you every day. And if you're worried about what the referees didn't call, you're going to miss the layup on the other side. You're not going to challenge that guy on the other side. If you're going to be rolling your eyes at your teammates, when JR made that boo-boo, crucial. It took the team right down here. That's when leaders step up and say, hey, look, I know you screwed up. We're going to get past this. We're absolutely going to get past it. If he would have stayed in Cleveland, I think he'd have won more championships. I honestly, because look, Kevin Love's a ball player. I'm taking him all day, every day. Tristan Thompson did his job. I ain't mad. Hey, Kyrie, let's figure out a way to work together. You can't be divider in chief and be the best player. It's impossible. Too many people have decided to move away from him as a ball player. Now, is he the best basketball player on the planet? Yeah. So why does Kyrie want his own team? I have no idea. But he played as well as any playmaker could have played when they won that championship. And without Kyrie, Kyrie really put it down. Scottie Pippen wasn't scoring 30 points with Michael Jordan when Mike was winning MVPs.
Not by any means.
0. So LeBron scoring 30, Kyrie scoring 30, Kevin Love scoring 20. So at the end of the day, you're looking at 50 plus points that Michael Jordan never had out of 2 players, right? So you look at LeBron. Kyrie leaves, and there's nothing else. So what does he do? He ain't got his ace boom coon on the other side to help him do whatever he needs to do. So without that dynamic playmaker doing this, doing that, LeBron got the ball in his hand way too much to win the championship.
And that's fair. I'll still go with the Lakers, and if I have to, die on that hill, I will go ahead and die on that hill. Isaiah's got one final question before we let you go, John.
Let's do it, Zay.
Hey, John, so you said earlier in the show, you played football. Football was your top sport before you converted to basketball. You played tight end. I want to ask you about the NFL. One question. Who wins the Super Bowl next season? Do the Chiefs repeat? Do my San Francisco 49ers go back to the Super Bowl and finally win it? Is Tom Brady, and his new Buccaneers team, are they winning it? What's your thoughts on the Super Bowl?
We're making John pick all the title winners.
You're speaking my language right now. I think, and I love Kansas City, I think they got really, really lucky in the Super Bowl. I think, Brady and
Tell them, John.
They just got shut down. I mean, and I'm just saying, they did everything that they had to do to come back in the second half and be that team that needed to win a Super Bowl. They earned it, but they got lucky because shit just fell apart with the other squad. But the San Francisco 49ers, when I tell you, they have a squad. They got something to build off of right now. And I think if I had to put my money on it, I'm going back San Francisco, Kansas City in the finals, in the Super Bowl. Those are my two.
You're speaking my language, John. That's my team right there, the 49ers.
What do you think, Steven? Who's in the
You know what? I'm gonna go with my guy, the Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks against Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens, and I got the Ravens pulling that one out. I think Lamar finally gets that playoff monkey off his back.
So you know that my nephew plays for the Seattle Seahawks.
Ooh. Well, tell him he's going to the Super Bowl, and we're gonna go, watch him in Seattle over there.
Well, we're supposed to meet in a couple of days. His name is Jaron Reed. Played at Alabama, won a national championship with Alabama, and he's a really, really, really talented football player. And I gave him the craps because they didn't get to the Super Bowl this year. I gave my friends from New England the craps because they didn't get to the Super Bowl. My friends from San Francisco, I gave them the craps because they didn't win the Super Bowl, but they choked. And,
man, you had dirt on all of them.
Hey, look, my Kansas City guys, I took Kansas City from day one. So I'm going to say that both of them are going back. And I think San Francisco comes back and get them. I do.
Wow.
I do. I think Kansas City comes back. I'm not Kansas City, but the 49ers, I'm sorry. 49ers comes back and win it. And I think only because no one never really knew exactly what to expect going into that environment. I think they got a pretty decent defensive backfield. They got a decent running game now, good quarterback, and I think they actually like each other a lot. And I think they feel they're going to come back with a vengeance because they feel like they left some food on the table and they're still hungry. And so I think that's going to be a driving factor. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope the Washington Redskins find a way to get to the playoffs, but I know it's not happening.
You guys are building a culture in DC, though. You guys got a good coach, got a good,
I turned in my fan card about 4 or 5 years ago with the Redskins, man. I just can't. I really can't. I even rooted for Dallas against the Redskins. We're so bad.
Oh, man.
But football is my love. I did the AFC playoffs for ESPN a couple of years too. And so I had a chance to work as a color analyst doing that. And I did some sideline reporting. So for me, that was really, really cool. That was almost a dream come true. I never really wanted to do television, but when I got involved, it was great. And just like I said, basketball has become a history book for me. And, I posted a picture the other day on my Facebook page of Larry Brown, one of the old running backs for the Redskins, and it just took me back to, the great days of the Hogs and, John Briggins and Joe Theismann, Billy Kilman, all the great guys. So football is it. So I'm going to take both Joe Montana's teams.
Wow. There we go. Joe Montana wins either way. But, I want to say, thank you so much for coming on the show, John. Isaiah certainly loves the Super Bowl pick. I'd love to see it too. A Bay Area team going back to it, seeing that kind of drama. And then if they can win it, that'd be amazing. But, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been amazing having you as a guest, someone who's had, experience in all facets of the game. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And, let us know when you want to come on again, and if Jerron Reed wants to come on.
I can get Jaron on. I'll have a conversation with him and let him know. If you send me your information by phone, I'll send you his information. I'll get him on for you. Won't be a problem at all.
Oh, that would be amazing, John. That would be amazing. And
I'll absolutely get him on for you. Then maybe I get my guy Chris Clemens to come on for you as well too, and let you know what he thinks about his rookie.
Wow, really appreciate all that help.
Yeah, so we'll do that. We'll help you get that done.
Yeah, man. Hey, John. Yeah, like Steven said earlier, thanks for coming on. We got to bring you back to talk some football. About college football, NFL. That'd be amazing.
Let's do it. I can't wait, man. Thank you guys for having me. And I'm going to say some prayers for you, Steven. So if Seattle wins, I win too, because my nephew's on the team and I'll be there. So we won't have any problems with that. But I wish they would have kept Jimmy Graham. That would have made it even better. I think they needed that big tight end.
Ooh.
They should have kept him. So, but that's a story for another day. But have me back anytime. I really appreciate you guys. You guys are beautiful people. And
thank you. You too.
If there's anything I can do, let me know.
Yeah, guys, thank you all for tuning in, watching John Spencer and us have this fantastic conversation, this fantastic interview. Be sure to like us, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and, follow John Spencer on Twitter and Facebook as well.
Thank you, my man.
All right, we'll leave you guys with some Blinding Lights.